Hey there, I am back with another deck review, and today we're going to be looking at the silver edition of the Star Wars playing cards from Theory 11. Now, Theory 11 is one of the legendary designers of luxury playing cards. They've done dozens of different decks with a lot of different collaborations along the way. But perhaps the biggest one was last year when they announced a collaboration with Lucasfilms and Disney to produce the original two Star Wars decks. That's these two over here, the red and the blue. Of course, inspired with a dark side and a light side version of the decks. I have to imagine these did incredibly well, which is why Theory 11 is back with two more versions of the deck in the white and black silver editions, once again going back to the light side and the dark side represented. So you know the inspiration. It is, of course, Star Wars, the legendary movie, but let's jump into these cards and see how they did. Now, mentioned there are two different decks, light side and dark side. At a glance, they look very similar, but there are definitely differences that abound throughout, especially on the tuck cases. So let's take a look at those. Now we'll start with the white version, the light side tuck case. It is really beautifully done, like all Theory 11 tucks. It's a white matte cardstock and it's covered with really deep embossing, as well as silver and a little bit of clear foil on the tuck. The center image here is kind of a view outside the window of the cockpit on the Millennium Falcon. You have Star Wars playing cards in the middle, and then tons of Star Wars symbols surrounding. Prominently, you have Luke's lightsaber on the left and the right here. You have symbols in the corners for the Rebel Alliance, as well as the Galactic Republic. Some of the famous ships from the movie, including the Y-Wing and the X-Wing up at the top. You also get a nice little Easter egg in here in these dots and dashes. This is actually Morse code, and it says, "Do or do not, there is no try." And then around the center here, you have a little bit more. It says, "May the Force be with you." So a couple of sayings, do or do not do, is my personal favorite quote from Star Wars, said by Yoda. And then, of course, "May the Force be with you," which pretty much everybody says at some point. So really beautiful design. I love how deep the embossing is on this as well. Turning to the side, you get another Yoda quote, "Luminous beings are we." On the other side, "May the Force be with you." Again, that really ubiquitous quote from the movie. The bottom has your ad copy for Theory 11. Of course, mentions Disney and Lucasfilms as well. And then on the top, you get that Yoda quote once again, "Do or do not, there is no try." And it's, of course, covered up in part by this large circular custom tuck seal. It's a metallic black and silver. It says, "Join the Rebellion" across the top. Has the symbol for the Rebel Alliance and has the same thing, "Join the Rebellion," written in Erubesh, one of the languages from the movie, across the bottom. The back here is going to be the back design of the cards. We'll look more at those details in a second, but you get to see it all nicely foiled and embossed on the back. Now turning over really quickly to the dark side tuck, just to point out some of the differences. Like I said, very similar overall design. I love how they kind of unified the two and kind of brought similarities between them. The window now instead represents the window of the Imperial Palace, so kind of what the view of that might look like. You have now Darth Vader's lightsabers instead of Luke's down the side. The symbols on the top have changed, so you have the symbol for the First Order from the most recent trilogy, as well as the Galactic Empire in the top right. And then the ships have also changed out, so you have Darth Vader's TIE Advanced Fighter, as well as a kind of a head-on view of one of the colossal destroyers up there at the top. So very, very nice. I have little TIE fighters here in the corners. Interestingly, that's not one of the details they changed up. So if you look on this one, TIE fighters, which are more prominently dark side vehicles, but they're also featured on the light side tuck. So interesting choice there. The side quotes have changed to be some of Darth Vader's quotes, including "The power of the dark side" and "Now I am the master." Same ad copy on the bottom, and the top has again covered up, but it says, "The Force is strong with this one." This is something that Darth Vader said about Luke Skywalker. Tuck seal slightly changed. We again get the Galactic Empire symbol in the center, and it says defend the Empire instead. Same thing written in Arabic at the bottom. Little preview of the back design of the cards. Get a nice look at that foil and embossing once again. Now, the interior of the tucks have more printing. So on the light side version, you have a few of the ships here. Stay on target with a Y-wing and a couple of X-wings. The dark side tuck features another quote from that same trench run against the in A New Hope, but this time says "I have you now," one of Darth Vader's quotes, and of course Darth Vader's TIE Advance and a couple of TIE fighters flanking him. And then inner flaps have a couple more ships, an X-wing and a TIE fighter respectively, and nothing printed on the interior of the tucks. 311 often does some really nice printing on the interior tucks, but none done on these. So all in all, really beautifully done tucks. That's always a really big high point of any 311 deck. These are no exception. Just beautiful foil and beautifully embossed, and just tons of little details throughout. So that's the tuck cases, but let's take a look at these cards, and we'll start with the two back designs. Once again, they look really similar at first glance, but lots of details. So we'll start with the light side version. So you have this nice reflected two-way back design. The circular elements of the top and the bottom are kind of a split between the top part here is the view out of the Millennium Falcon as they kind of go into hyperdrive. And then on the bottom half, it's made up of R2-D2, kind of the top dome of R2-D2 right there. Very cool. You get other little details, including little X-wing repeated pattern here, symbols for the Rebel Alliance and the Rebel Alliance and the Galactic Republic there in the center, and then more Arabic symbols here that you can see. This says on one side it says the Force, and on the other side this says light side. Luke Skywalker's flank on the left and right, symbol for the Jedi in the corners there, and it's finished out with a nice thin poker border, all done in kind of a black and white style. It's actually kind of a dark gray and white. And now the dark side version inverts those colors, so the primary color is that dark gray with white lines. A lot of the details have changed out, so instead of R2-D2, we have the bottom half of the Death Star. The view here becomes that view out of the Imperial Palace. Over here, the Arabic symbols that said light side before, of course, now say dark side. We have TIE fighters instead of the X-wings that we saw on the other. The symbols in the center have changed to some of the Galactic Empire symbols. And we have the symbol here in the corner for the Sith Trooper. That's actually one that was only in the very most recent movie. And then the two lightsabers on the sides, just like the tuck case, now feature Darth Vader's lightsaber. So very nicely done on the details. I wish there had been a little bit more color. I think they're a little bit monotone or kind of flat to me. So I wish they'd done a little bit more with color on these, but I can't complain too much when you cram that much symbology and so many details into this one in such a, I think, cohesive and beautiful pattern. So there are the two back designs. Now that's where the differences between the decks are going to end. So from here on out, the faces of the two decks are completely the same. So I'm just going to look at one of them. We're going to put the dark side aside and take a look at the light side. We're going to start out with the extra card you get. So you get a pair of Jokers. Feature a couple of the famous droids from the most recent trilogy. You've got BB-8 doing his little comedic relief thumbs up with the lighter there, and D-O on the other. Both with Joker down the sides, and there's really nicely done artwork, very clean. I love the kind of muted colors that are used throughout. So there are your two Jokers. You also get a couple of ad cards. One is just a pretty standard Theory 11 ad card, and the other is a Star Wars ad card on both sides. So that's the extra cards, but let's get into the rest of the deck and start with the aces. Now, all four aces are custom, but the ace of spades is definitely the most prominent, and it is an absolutely fantastic design on this one. Features a fairly nondescript spade pip, but overlaid on top in that kind of metallic ink is a really cool scene from the swamps of Dagobah. So you have Luke Skywalker's X-Wing as it rises out of the swamps. And I love this touch here. Yoda standing down there at the bottom, kind of lifting his arm. One of the first big demonstrations of the use of the Force that you see in the movies. And it's a really great moment from A New Hope, and I love how it's captured on the Ace of Spades. Nice, thin font on the index here, and a pretty small, tiny spade pip there in the corner. The other 3 aces also feature ships, but a much smaller version. So you have just a nice small pip, and then the ship overlaid in metallics on the top. So you have Boba Fett's Slave 1 on the diamond, Darth Vader's TIE Advance on the club, and the heart, of course, features Han Solo's Millennium Falcon, perhaps the most famous ship of them all. So there's your 3 aces. The number cards are nothing too special, really small and slightly custom pips, classic shape, but they're all kind of done in these 2 tones. Nice kind of representation, I think, of dark side and light side on these, as you get that 2-tone look with dark on one side and then kind of a lined pattern on the other to form a lighter shade. But that continues through with really just classic arrangement of the pips. Red pips are more the same, so you get a true red on one side and then red and black striping on the other. And same basic premise through the clubs and the hearts. But not too much else to say about the number cards, but the quartz on this one are fantastic. So let's get into those. Now the quartz are going to feature some of the prominent characters from the Star Wars movies. And they're done in these really beautiful styles that are very kind of reminiscent of the familiar quartz that we know and love, but at the same time, really nicely recognizable as their Star Wars characters they're meant to depict. So starting with the Jack of Spades, you get Boba Fett. Really nice, again, kind of muted colors with the grays and the reds. Little hits of metallic ink with a gold coloring, but a really cool look at Boba Fett. The Queen of Spades is Queen Amidala from the prequel trilogy. And the King of Spades is the one and only Darth Vader. So he's got his lightsaber up there, and he has that kind of choke hold as if he's summoning the Force with his hand there. Love all the details from the helmet to the chest panel, everything on this one. So really nicely done on the King of Spades. Now you will notice as I go through this, there's a mixture of light side and dark side. So all the quartz are the same across both decks. They do a mixture of characters throughout this. I kind of wish they'd brought in more characters and done a light side and a dark side deck. I think that would have been cool, but that's not where they went with this one. Now turning to the diamonds, you get Lando Calrissian there. Very cool look at him. Very recognizable in the face on that one. The Queen of Diamonds is Rey with her bow staff, introduced in episode 7. And then the King of Diamonds is old man Luke Skywalker. So this is not the young Luke Skywalker from A New Hope. This is the older one from the later trilogy, and you can tell in large part because of his metallic hand, which had been cut off by Darth Vader, and he of course has his famed lightsaber in hand. There's old man Luke Skywalker. The Jack of Clubs is a really nice look at Kylo Ren. He has that really recognizable T-guard on his lightsaber as well. Nice little touch on this one. It's actually a one-sided, so each side is a little bit different. So on one side you have him, notice there's no scar on his face, but if you flip over to the other side, later in the movies he picks up a scar, and so you can see that represented on the other side. I like the little depiction. Another thing I wish they'd done on more of the cards, I think it would have been cool to see, because so many of the characters evolved in some way through the movies, maybe picked up some distinctive characteristic that you can recognize them by in the later movies. I think it would have been cool to do kind of a before and after on all the cards, or at least on more of them. But this Kylo Ren's the only one that I could see that features anything like that. Nice little touch. The Queen of Clubs is not as well known of a character. This is Mon Mothma, one of the founders of the Rebel Alliance, and you see her make an appearance in the prequel trilogies. The King of Clubs is kind of shrouded in mystery there. That is Emperor Palpatine, otherwise known as Darth Sidious. You can just make out his face there, and that's pretty much what he looks like every time you see him in the movies, or at least when he's as Darth Sidious. And then, last but not least, are the hearts, and these are probably three of the most recognizable characters from the original movies. But you have Han Solo in his classic pose with his blaster there. Princess Leia. I wish they had done her without the hood. She does show up in a hood sometimes, but I feel like, especially with that iconic hairstyle, it would have been nice to be able to see that. And then, last but not least, is the King of Hearts, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I love the choice of him as the suicidal king, of course, because of how he dies in the trilogy. So because of how he kind of gives himself up to death against Darth Vader. Sorry for the spoilers, but you had plenty of time to watch the movie. But I love the choice of him as the suicidal king here. So that is the light side deck. And like I said, the dark side deck faces are identical. Now, as far as handling of the deck and the rest of that, handles well. It's just done on regular, non-crushed stock, but they handle really beautifully. It's a USPCC printed deck. No complaints at all. It's going to feel a lot like any bicycle deck or something like that you felt. So great handling, cuts, fans, dribbles, springs, all that. It's going to handle really nicely. So no complaints on that front. But what do we think of the deck overall? Much like the original two, I really, really like it. I will say I like that there's little pops of color in the red and blue versions of the deck, but with it being a dark side, light side deck, I like that they went with just a clean black and white as well. Like a lot of Theory 11 decks, the tuck cases are really the big highlight. I think this is really going to be where you're going to see the most appreciation for what was put together. But the cards in this one don't disappoint either. Really nice back designs, beautifully done quartz, fantastic ace of spades, so just a ton to love in this deck. It's a deck you're going to want to use for gameplay. Any Star Wars fanatic in your life would absolutely love to use this for a game of poker. You could probably make this work for Magic or cardistry as well. But for me, this is one you want to open up. You want to appreciate every single detail of this deck. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought of the deck. If you picked up the other two, did you have the first two? Did you pick up the new silver editions? But hope you enjoyed this look at the silver edition of the Star Wars playing cards. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe for more deck reviews and unboxings, and may the Force be with you.